Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this TechCentral webinar. My name is Sean Besant. I'm the Marketing Manager for TechCentral, and I'll be your host today. I want to thank you for taking the time to join us as we discuss Windows 7 and Server 2008 end of life and how it can impact your practice. I have a few housekeeping things I want to go over before we jump into the presentations. First, there are a handful of widgets at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to use them to submit questions during the presentation. I'll be monitoring those questions and I'll give them out to the presenters as they go along. Also, once the webinar is concluded, I ask that you be sure to fill out a short webinar survey that can be found in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Your feedback helps us to ensure that we're providing the content that is valuable to you and that will help you be more successful in your practice. For those of you who are new to us, TechCentral by Henry Schein One is a leading provider of IT solutions and services that are optimized and integrated specifically for dental practices. Unlike other IT companies and retail outlets that simply sell IT solutions out of the box, TechCentral partners with industry-leading partners like Microsoft and WatchGuard to ensure that you have the right solutions for your dental IT environment. We'll focus on your IT technology so that you can focus on your patients. Our first speaker today is Jeff Malik. Jeff is the Senior Director of Channel Distribution and Sales through HP for Microsoft. He's been with Microsoft Corporation since 2000, and he currently leads the team responsible for Microsoft's relationship with HP in the United States. Prior to this role, Jeff was responsible for Microsoft's OEM authorized distributor partners and breadth resellers through a national dedicated sales team. Jeff has spent his entire career at Microsoft developing new programs to drive sales of Windows, Office, Windows servers, and other Microsoft products through authorized distributors to the broad community of resellers. He's currently based in Dallas, Texas. Thank you for joining us today, Jeff. And I'm going to turn the time over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you. I appreciate it, Sean. And good morning and good afternoon to some of the folks here today. I'm thrilled that you're able to join, and I'm really happy that the team from Henry Schein has asked me to come and talk to you about modern IT in your practice. We're coming up on a big milestone in about 4 or 5 months, so we'll get to that in a second. But overall, I want to set the table and talk to you a little bit about why we're going down this path. The first thing is, I know many of you are in your businesses are running devices that are a little long in the tooth. And that can not only have an impact on the security of your business, but also the cost of running it, as well as the talent that you attract. I'm willing to bet that the average age of the device in your practice right now is between 4 and 5 years old. And it's not like I can see into your practice. It's just a law of numbers right now, especially in the small, medium business space that we look after in this particular piece. The reality is those devices are probably out of warranty as well. And if you've talked to anyone in the IT business, once that device goes out of warranty, the cost of adding additional support years gets more and more expensive. And it actually starts to approach the cost of just replacing the units. And the reality is because the old technology is just harder and harder to support. There's one big issue that we need to think about in terms of technology, and that is really around security. We've seen a lot of news around breaches, intrusions, which target companies, and they pull out confidential information, and those bad guys use it to go and either steal credit cards or open up new accounts or ultimately create disarray across the overall economic system. Retailers get a lot of attention, but healthcare is specifically targeted due to the confidential nature of the data that you're managing and the data that you're storing. The bad guys are out there, they're trying to get that data, and they've evolved considerably over the past few years. And the fact is, products designed many years ago, 4 to 5 years ago, when the devices that you are running in your practice now, they didn't consider some of the new tactics that these bad guys are employing to try and pull that data out. So I want to show you just some statistics, not to make you worry, but really just to level set so you get a sense of why we're coming to the table with this discussion today. The first thing is around security, and there's a number up there in a box. It's in the first column. It's about $150. That's the cost of each record of data that is stolen or breached out of the average environment. And that's not Equifax, that's not Target, that's not Premera Health or Blue Cross Blue Shield, that's the average SMB. It's $150. So if you have 10,000 records across your customer base that are stolen, that's going to be the cost multiply $150 each to remediate and protect that data going forward. The next piece really is around attracting talent. And raise your hand if you have difficulty keeping people, especially in this environment. You know, it's a very, very low unemployment rate, and people have extensive mobility right now. So we want to make sure that we attract the right people, but also keep them. And the fact is, almost over 50% of the workforce right now is the generation millennial. And 83% of that workforce says that tech sways their job choices. So having things that are modern, secure, and things that they're used to really helps make a decision in coming to work or you're coming to stay in your practice. We know that your core business is not IT, and that's why Henry Schein exists. And then the third thing is around support. Over 85%, so nearly 100% of small, medium businesses are running PCs that are over 4 years old, again, out of warranty. The average cost to the business in hard and soft cost is over $500 a year. So over 2 years, you start to approach the cost of a new device. So it makes sense to really consider what is the old technology costing your business versus what does it cost to maintain a modern IT infrastructure in your environment. Before we move on, though, I want to explore just a little bit more and just really get you grounded in this overall employee retention, because this is super important. 3/4 of workers right now report that their employers don't give them access to the right technology to get their jobs done. They either struggle with old platforms or not the right platform, or the products haven't been upgraded, and whether that's software and applications or whether that's the hardware themselves. People are working very differently in a mobile environment, and that needs to be considered when you're looking at designing your overall IT infrastructure, but also maintaining it and keeping it up to date. And the fact is that there are 40% of workers out there that have quit over the last few years that said technology, poor technology, is actually driving that discussion or driving that choice. So what do we do about it? And the reality is, my call to action, my request of you today is to look at your IT infrastructure, whether it's servers or PCs, and consider making an upgrade to modern devices. Out of that, you'll get 1/3 fewer security issues that you'll have to deal with just from upgrading the hardware without flipping additional switches or adding additional software. Just by upgrading the hardware and upgrading Windows, you'll get great benefit. When you apply on additional benefits from some of the speakers today, you'll see even greater benefit out of that. You'll get 3 times fewer repairs. So if you ever have a device that's sitting around your office right now that is constantly broken down, needs a percussive maintenance, as we call it, or a swift little nudge on the side to get it going, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And then overall, you'll get almost 3 times better performance just by upgrading those devices. And we have a very important milestone coming up, and that's in January of this particular year, or actually 2020. And it's the end of support, or EOS, for Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008. I bet a lot of your practices are running on these platforms right now. This is super, super important, and I need you to think about this, because at the end of January, we'll no longer support these operating systems. So what does that mean to you? What does end of support mean from a practical standpoint? And the reality is, if you can continue to use Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008, you've licensed those in perpetuity, your device will still work, things will still boot up, but there'll be security vulnerabilities in terms of risks. Those bad guys that are out there writing viruses, writing Trojans, writing malware, trying to steal records from healthcare and retail and all sorts of different businesses, they're going to get more and more sophisticated. And we're telling our customers right now here at Microsoft, and we've been saying this for a while, Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008 will no longer get updates, fixes, patches, no technical support, no software updates, no security updates after January 14th, 2020. Now, I know there's some questions, so I prepared a couple of them that go through people's minds. Let me know if this helps you answer some of the issues. If not, we've got the Q&A opened up too, and you can definitely have a conversation there as well. But ultimately, the question is, can you upgrade your PC to Windows 10? chances are pretty high that you can take that device from Windows 7 to Windows 10. The reality is, though, over the last few years, we've made significant advances at the hardware level, especially with HP, which is the OEM that I work with specifically, in building in hardware safety. And that integrates with Windows very elegantly so that we can keep you secure at the silicon level that's below the OS before it even boots up, so that you can harden the system and manage your data and manage your security more effectively as well as simply. You can still continue to use Windows 7, but the reality is no more updates. You're putting your business at risk. And I'm not a lawyer, but I know there are specific HIPAA implications if you continue to use unsupported software. And we all know that HIPAA compliance is a general concern, especially of folks in this profession. Internet Explorer will still be running. You can still activate Windows 7 going forward. But again, the big risk here is that you're rolling the dice on your practice. So how do you know if you have Windows 7 or Windows 8? And I've got a real simple way to figure it out. You just go right to that device and look at the Start menu. And that's the button that you push to bring up your Start menu in the lower left-hand piece of your screen. If it looks like that little round ball with the Windows flag in it, you definitely have Windows 7 or Windows Server 2008. If you've got the little square with a new sort of modern Windows logo that seems all white or all black, then you have Windows 10 or Windows Server 2016 or 2019, and you should continue to receive those security updates going forward. So, question in your mind, what do I need to do if I wanted to do this all myself? So on the left, Microsoft has actually published guidelines, white papers, and videos to help customers mitigate their issues, figure out and plan their conversion, and then ultimately migrate to Windows 10 from Windows 7. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 steps. You can do all those, or you can just click the box on the right-hand side, and you can get in contact with Henry Schein, and they've got a strong staff of people that will help you out. They'll come have a chat with you around a free network assessment and give you recommendations on how to get to a modern IT infrastructure. So that being said, let me know if you have questions or concerns. And if not, Sean, I'll turn it back to you and we can entertain those discussions in chat.
All right. Well, Jeff, thank you so much. I did have a couple of questions that came through while you were presenting. One of the questions was, and it's fairly logical one given the topic, what happens if they haven't migrated off of Windows 7 or Windows 2008 by mid-January? I mean, will they see any degradation in their performance, or do they have any immediate things that they need to work on?
Oh, that's an excellent question. There'll be no change to the performance or to the features of Windows 7 or Windows Server 2008. You just won't get security updates that come forward or feature updates. We won't be developing on that platform going forward. So the look and the feel of your devices should remain the same. We don't plan on deprecating anything at this time.
Okay, and finally, how can they know if their current hardware will work with the newest versions of Windows? Is that something that they should probably? My suggestion, I'll answer the question before you answer it, Jeff. My suggestion is get a free technology assessment. That's some of the information that will come out of our technology assessment, is whether your current equipment is going to be able to handle an operating system upgrade. Are there any other things that they should consider, Jeff, though, as they look at that?
You bet, yeah. Chances are very high in the 90s that older hardware will be supported by Windows 10. The problem is, though, is that older hardware, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, is prone to failure. So the reality is that you'll have to pay for an upgrade from Windows 7 to Windows 10. Probably, I think it's $200, $250. And then you'll have to pay to get it installed. It actually makes more sense, given the fact that that hardware is prone to failure based on its age, just to look at new hardware. And the prices of hardware have come down considerably in the last few years. You definitely want to take that a look and weigh your options closely.
And in kind of a related question, I had somebody ask if Windows Server 2012 R2 will still be supported, or is it being end-of-lifed as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. Server 2012 R2 will still be supported through, I believe it's 2022, so 3 more years, but I'll look that up to get the answer for you, and I'll post it back into chat with the exact dates so that you have it.
Perfect. Great. Thank you. Well, Jeff, again, thanks so much for your time today, and we appreciate our partnership with Microsoft, and we appreciate you coming to join us. So we'll now move on to Mr. Mark LaLiberté. Mark is an information security threat analyst at WatchGuard Technologies. Specializing in network security protocols and the Internet of Things technologies, Mark's day-to-day responsibilities include researching and reporting on the latest information security threats and trends. He has discovered, analyzed, and disclosed numerous security vulnerabilities in a variety of Internet of Things devices since joining the WatchGuard team in 2012. And with that, Mark, I will turn the time over to you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sean. So for the next 15 minutes or so, I get to talk to you guys about all of these security risks that you might experience if you stick around on Windows 7 or Windows Server 2008. My unfortunate job, I suppose, is to scare you guys, but really it's just to act as an incentive to get you off of an operating system that is running out of support. So for my talk here, I'm going to break it down into 3 main sections. We'll start with what exactly happens, what does it mean when a version of Windows operating system goes end of support in terms of security. And then after that, we'll jump into the compliance risks that you might face if you continue running on an out of support version of Windows. And then we'll run into the security risks with a few examples of attacks that have preyed on unpatched versions of Microsoft Windows and some additional threats that are out there too. So let's go ahead and start with what exactly happens. What does it mean when a version of Windows goes end of support? Well, it's actually quite simple in terms of security. It means that you no longer get security updates. And that means that you have, when security vulnerabilities are discovered, as they always are, you will no longer get fixes to them, which means your version of Windows will remain vulnerable to these security threats until you finally stick around and upgrade. Now, there are caveats to this. There are extended security update programs, but they cost money per device. And in the end, it could end up costing you more than just straight up upgrading your version of Windows. Now, when it comes to attackers, they're quite lazy. The hackers don't like exerting a whole lot of effort in order to get their targets, which means they're going to go after whatever the easiest target is. And if you're running an older version of Windows that has unpatched vulnerabilities in it, it makes you a much greater target for these guys to go after because they can use automated tools to try and scan and identify these vulnerabilities and then infect your systems and computers automatically with very minimal effort from them. So quite simply, leaving your computer unpatched and unupdated leaves you a much easier target for these bad guys. So now let's jump into the actual risks that you might face if you continue to run an older version of Windows. And the first up is compliance. Now, all of you have to be HIPAA compliant because of your practices, and there is a standard governing the patching of vulnerabilities in your systems. Section 164.308, there's a few different bullet points that are applicable here. The first is under standard security management processes, which says you must implement policies and procedures to prevent, detect, contain, and correct security violations. And these subsections in there say, follow along with risk management as a required safeguard, where you must implement security measures sufficient to reduce risk and vulnerabilities to a reasonable and appropriate level. And then additionally, periodic security updates are required as well. And really this means you are obligated under HIPAA to keep your computers patched from known vulnerabilities. And if patches are not available because your version of Windows is out of support and patches are no longer being released to the public, that means that you are no longer within compliance. And if you are aware of this, that could be classified as a Tier 4 HIPAA violation, which falls under willful neglect. and it's $50,000 or more for each violation, up to $1.5 million per calendar year for the same event. That number can really add up, as you can see, just by keeping an out-of-date version of Windows if you happen to be the victim of a breach and you are found out of compliance with HIPAA. Also, if you process payment card information directly in your practice, which I'm sure a few of you might fall under PCI compliance as well. And PCI DSS has requirement 6.2, which says you must ensure that all systems, components, and software are protected from known vulnerabilities by installing applicable vendor-supplied security patches and install critical security patches within 1 month of release. And so if there are known vulnerabilities and no patches are available because it's end of support, you could be found out of compliance with PCI and fined by your payment card processing vendor, which can range anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 per month until you are found back in compliance with this requirement. So those are just the compliance threats, and those are the fines that you can face if you're found out of line with the red tape. But when it comes to threats, there's a whole nother level of money that you might be losing if you become the victim of a breach because of outdated Windows operating systems. So let's go ahead and jump into some of those security risks right now. And first up, Jeff already mentioned that globally the average cost per record for a breach is $148. The bad news is, in the United States specifically, that number jumps up to $233 per record. And this can really add up. It doesn't matter if you're a smaller organization, maybe you only have a few hundred or a few thousand patient records or employee records. The cost per record adds up really dramatically because of that per record amount. And that covers all things from fines for HIPAA compliance, reputation hits, the cost to bring in a company to clean up after the mess and investigate what happened, the cost for new software or systems to recover from the breach if you're hit with something like ransomware. It all really starts to add up. And next I'll jump into a few examples here for some of these threats that you might face if you're running an outdated version of Windows. And the first one is a pretty big example that I'm sure most of you already heard about. That is the Eternal Blue vulnerability that happened a few years ago. It was actually first announced back in March of 2017 and patched by Microsoft really quickly on supported operating systems. At this point in time, Windows XP was already out of its extended support date by almost 3 years. Now, in April 14th, 2017, so exactly 1 month later, an organization known as the Shadow Brokers released a trove of zero-day exploits that they had allegedly stolen from the NSA, our own security organization. And included in those exploits were these Eternal Blue vulnerabilities and the actual exploit code required to go after them. And it only took 1 month after this point in time for it to start causing some pretty drastic damages across the entire world. If you're not already familiar with Eternal Blue, it was a vulnerability in the Windows Server Message Block protocol, or SMB, which is the protocol used by Windows and other operating systems to share files or attach network storage, and I suppose attack network storage as well, with my little Freudian slip there in the writing. The vulnerability allows an attacker to execute arbitrary code on the system. That means that they can basically run any command, execute any action, launch any application, really do whatever they want on those affected systems. But most importantly, it was wormable, and that means that an attacker could exploit this vulnerability to spread automatically across a network of vulnerable systems. If they got into one, they could scan the network for additional vulnerable computers and propagate without any interaction from any user on that network or even the attacker themselves. And I mentioned that less than a month later, cyber criminals took these vulnerabilities and added them to ransomware, creating our first ransom worm, which is a piece of ransomware that can spread automatically because of worm-like exploits. And this attack started in Europe. It hit the NHS pretty hard. It hit a lot of shipping companies, FedEx, Deutsche Bank. And in the end, It caused over $4 billion in losses because of this attack globally. Now, the attackers actually didn't make a whole lot of money. I think it was on the order of like $100,000, which in terms of a ransomware attack is not actually a whole lot of money, but the damages to businesses that were affected by it were huge because this attack was so prolific. It actually prompted Microsoft to release a patch several months later for Windows XP, even though it was out of support because the vulnerability was so strong. But at that point in time, it was still too late. There were still so many systems across the world that were hit by this because they were still running outdated versions of Microsoft Windows. Even several years after the fact now, you've probably all heard about Baltimore getting hit with ransomware. They were hit with a variant called Robin Hood that exploited the exact same Eternal Blue vulnerabilities, and now they're facing $18 million plus worth of damages because of this attack, because even several years after the fact, they were still running outdated or unpatched versions of their operating systems. We've seen other examples recently of very dangerous-looking vulnerabilities. Just a few weeks ago, Microsoft released an advisory about Bluekeep, which is a zero-day vulnerability in the Remote Desktop Protocol, or RDP, which computers use to remote in for remote access. Now, this vulnerability was pre-authentication, which means attackers didn't need any username or password in order to exploit it. All they needed was an open service, which by default on Windows is open. And again, this vulnerability is wormable, which means if your computer is exposed to the internet or an attacker has access to your internal network, they can easily spread from system to system by exploiting it. This one was actually so dangerous that Microsoft went out of their way to release a patch for even Windows XP, which is not the norm. We actually just saw yesterday another set of vulnerabilities released because of Google Project Zero, where a Google researcher found a vulnerability in the CTF protocol in Windows, which is a client and server model for basically sending instructions about the operating system language or keyboard input methods between applications on the system. So long story short, when an application starts up on your computer or a server, Windows automatically starts up something called a CTF client. And the Google researcher found that there wasn't any access controls, which means a user could process basically any command that they wanted to a CTF session and hijack whatever application was using that. This is a classic privilege escalation vulnerability, as we call it, where if an attacker already has access to a vulnerable system, they can elevate their privileges and cause significantly more damages. And this is one that will most likely remain unpatched on unsupported versions of Windows like XP and just allow damaging attacks to cause significantly more damages because of their extended access. So really, those are the types of threats that you need to watch out for when it comes to an unpatched version of Windows. The good news is, if you upgrade to Windows 10, you'll continue receiving security patches for several more years as well to keep you safe from these types of threats. And even though Microsoft did go out of their way to release patches for Windows XP, that is not the norm for those threats I mentioned. There are still several unpatched vulnerabilities on Windows XP out there, and there will continue to be more unpatched vulnerabilities on Windows 7, and it is not Microsoft's fault. At some point, they have to end support of an operating system, and we need to move on and upgrade to something more secure and possibly running on more modern hardware. So that's it for me. Sean, did any questions come through?
Yeah, there were a couple of questions, Mark, and thank you for that presentation. I think that everybody on this webinar today understands that dentists and all businesses, and for that matter, increasingly rely on digital technology to do their work. And so it's imperative that they take steps to secure their practice from the bad actors that you mentioned in your presentation. I had a couple of questions for you. One was this one. Beyond keeping up to date with operating system patches, what types of things do dental practices need to do to protect their practice data?
Yeah, so one of the things that I always preach is something called the layered security approach. where you have layers of security like an onion, basically, so that if an attack gets through one, you have other layers to back it up. Really, your operating system and its patch level should be one of the last layers in your security model, where if an attacker has already gotten that far, they've gotten past a whole lot of your other protections. So what I mean by layered security, that means like network level protections, network level anti-malware scanning or intrusion prevention services, endpoint agents running on your server or computer, that's traditional anti-malware or endpoint detection and response agents, and then obviously the patch level for both your operating system and all applications that you run on it to remove the low-hanging fruit of known vulnerabilities.
Great. And then one final question. You've walked through a number of threats that businesses must guard against. Can you talk just for a moment about internal threats as well, and how good IT technology practices can help practices protect their data from both internal and external threats?
Yeah, and honestly, I could probably give a half-an-hour webinar on that topic alone. Our internal employees tend to be one of our biggest risks when it comes to security threats out there. All it takes is one employee to click on a phishing email or bring in a thumb drive that they found in the parking lot outside to cause a security incident. And so things like training or basic phishing awareness or security awareness can go a long ways to keeping you protected. And then having technical tools on the inside that can look at your systems, like we call them endpoint detection and response agents, so that if an event makes it through your perimeter or maybe comes in from a different angle, you still have layers of security there to keep you safe from whatever attack they're trying to launch.
Well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. That's great advice for all of us, and especially for dental practices that have a special obligation due to the HIPAA regulation, other regulations surrounding data protection. So, again, I want to thank you for your time, and that'll bring us to our final presenter today. And our final presenter is David Broom. David is a Senior Director of Product and Business Development at TechCentral by Henry Schein One. David has a master's degree in information technology from the University of Texas at Dallas and has more than 35 years experience working at global companies such as Hitachi Vantara, Methode Electronics, and Keen Incorporated prior to coming to TechCentral. David is responsible for all aspects of product management and field services teams at TechCentral by Henry Schein One, which identifies the ideal advanced technologies and services to meet the unique needs of the dental market and ensures that dental offices are using the right IT to be more efficient and more effective. David, thank you again for being here today, and I will turn the time over to you.
Hi, Sean. I very much appreciate it, and thank you for that introduction. I'm very appreciative of Jeff and Mark and their time for discussing the importance of addressing these issues, especially end of life, and how you deal with unsupported software in general. I'm very appreciative to have these strategic partners involved in guiding our dental practices and dental partners here. So let's recap real quickly here and summarize the Windows end of life. The data set, the risks are real. To help review some of this, if you have some time, please take a few moments to review a blog that I put back in June 1929 in the Dental Products Shop, which walks you through some of these challenges that you have. In short, to healthcare, the risks are very high. And as an example, earlier this year in April, I was reviewing our customer install base and discovered approximately 25% of our install base were on servers or workstations with either Windows 7 or Windows 2008 or even older unsupported OSs. So we are working with those clients today. We actually have a campaign going through the end of the year to get those customers updated to mitigate these risks. Real quickly, I would strongly suggest you follow the recommendations and suggestions here by Microsoft and WatchGuard. They are industry leaders in this space of security, and we are very glad to be partnered with them. Some things to consider. Do this sooner than later. for a couple of reasons that weren't mentioned today, but I'll bring those up, which are also related to this, is in late Q4 this year and early Q1 of next year, there will be seasonal labor shortages in the IT industry. And this is primarily due to high demands for installations that occur at the end of the year. There's another challenge going on at the same time. Probably a high probability there will be continuation of an Intel chipset shortage that is impacting availability of certain computers. So those two things, along with the other ones, make it more critical that to make this change or make these upgrades sooner than later. One thing to consider is addressing this challenge permanently by considering hardware as a service from Omnicore from Henry Schein One, where one of the primary benefits is the managing of the lifecycle of hardware and the software, and the second primary benefit is security patches that we constantly do that proactively. So let's talk a little bit about a solid IT foundation. There are three words, we mentioned one of those today having to do with security, but there are three things that you need to look at as an underlying theme for a solid IT foundation, and that is it security, is it reliable, and is it available? So when you look at that, when you look at all three of these points there, all four of these areas, security, reliability, and availability are extremely important. So let's look at the four areas. Hardware, obviously, you want your hardware to be reliable. What I tell people is get branded hardware like HP, like WatchGuard. You want branded hardware for one primary reason, and that's because you get warranties and you can get extended warranties. Typically in servers, you can get warranties up to 5 years. That's very important for two key points, reliability, availability, and even the last one, security. Make sure it's secure. Make sure that environment is secure. Make sure it's encrypted. One of the areas that I see where people kind of struggle on the hardware side is on the universal power supplies and the batteries. Make sure those are current, 3 years or less. Also, I encourage something my customers to do, ensure that the hardware specs exceed the application and software specifications to allow for growth. On the software side, can't emphasize enough on this, be current. That was one of the conversation today is about being current. You want to be in a current, stable version of all your software. And that's including your applications, your practice management software, and the others. Another reason for make sure you're on the current, stable version is so you can have the latest features in those applications as well, too. In the area of services, that's really about partnerships. I could basically replace the word service with partnerships. You want to partner with somebody who's proactive. Like us, we have managed service offerings. We have Omnicore hardware as a service. You want someone who's experienced, who's integrated the dental business. You want someone who has close relationships with organizations like Microsoft, like WatchGuard. Someone who can give you advice and guidance. And you really want someone who will tell you no. What I mean by that is someone who will look at your environment, analyze it, look at the risk, and they will say, no, I can't support you because of your risk. You want that honest opinion from somebody. And finally, we can't state enough about policies and procedures. This is one year's responsibility. Make sure they're written, make sure they're posted, make sure people are trained and updated. Work with a partner like Henry Schein One, where we actually embed best practices into our Omnicore offerings and our managed services. And I strongly recommend you get a third-party review. It's a very good practice. And my recommendation is that third-party review not be your IT company, be somebody else. I welcome that when third parties come in and review us. I think it's a positive thing for our clients, and it's a positive thing for us. So quickly, we do have a plethora of managed services. They're very reasonably priced. They do assist in providing the protections we've been talking about today. Everything from our hybrid backup to our endpoint protection to our award-winning hardware as a service Omnicore. All these are available from us, and they provide the things we've talked about today for protecting the practice. And to recap here, you heard this conversation here about these layers of security, talking about we have 7 layers of security. This is the thing that Jeff and Mark talked about. To drill down on one of these, you can look at our Wi-Fi. We actually separate the Wi-Fi out between public and private, whereas your office is secured and the public offering for the customers allows that. We also provide protection from what we call brute force attacks, where someone is trying every possible key to break into your Wi-Fi. We prevent those. We also protect you from man-in-the-middle attacks, where someone pretends to be somebody else. These are just some of the things that we provide, and you can see that we definitely have a multi-layer approach in this. And because of that multi-layer approach, we won Project of the Year from WatchGuard this year because of our comprehensive approach to security. We wanted to provide a holistic approach to our clients. That's one of the primary reasons why we looked at doing or providing hardware as a service. OmniCore is the best way to have a solid IT foundation. It permanently addresses your OS issues and it permanently addresses your security things. I believe the second best way is to look at our managed services. Very appreciative of your time, and I hope you found this session to be very valuable. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those questions. Sean, I turn it back over to you.
David, thank you. Yeah, I do have one question here. There was a question we've mentioned a number of times during this webinar about this free technology assessment that TechCentral offers. The question was, what type of kind of technology knowledge does the practice staff have to have to participate in a technology assessment, and how long does that assessment generally take?
Well, there is no really technical requirement from their staff. We do this remotely. We are actually, if we're given permission to log on to the server, we can run this technical assessment remotely on their server and on their workstations. If we have to do something locally, we'll provide them a USB stick that they can put in every machine, but typically we don't have to do that. So it's very unintrusive, given that we do it remotely and that we collect the data. And once we collect the data, we take 24 to 48 hours to analyze that data, and then we provide it back to the client with some recommendations. If, in fact, they have any gaps, we'll let them know. If they don't, we'll let them know as well, too. As far as long as it takes, again, like I said, it is non-intrusive, so there's very little time needed from their staff, if any time from the staff, basically just to provide us access, remote access, that we obviously do a secure remote access and go forward from there.
Great. And one final question. Can you explain one of the layers that you talk about, one of the services that TechCentral provides is data backup. Can you explain what hybrid data backup is and how that benefits a dental practice?
Sure. Hybrid backup for us is what it is. It provides a local copy. We provide a backup appliance, typically a NAS appliance, network attached storage. We provide a local backup appliance that we back all the information on the server. And again, I repeat this, we back everything up on the server to that local appliance. And then 3 times a day, if you're on our hardware service, we push that information to the cloud, to where we have multiple data centers in the U.S. that we upload this data into a secure environment. And so you basically have 3 copies. You have your copy that's yours, that you're running your production. Then you have a local copy that's on a network-attached storage device, and you have a copy in the cloud. It's encrypted locally. It's encrypted in the cloud. It's done automatically. There is no staff involvement in that, and we manage and monitor that remotely. We actually have a dashboard that we watch. We do well over several thousand customers that we do this for, and we know whether the backup's successful or fail, and if there's an issue, we proactively take care of that to no additional charge to the customer. And if there is a challenge, if there's an issue, if they have a data breach or something, or their server goes down, given that the data is stored locally, given the cloud, we will restore that data for them at no charge, because that's included in the monthly charge for the service. There's no additional charge to recover.
Great. Well, Those are the questions we had. I had one additional question come in as you were answering that question, David, and it's how do we reach? Who do you reach out to? How do you reach out to get your technology assessment? There are a couple of ways to do that, and you can see the information here on the screen. You can either go to henryscheintechcentral.com/EOL, and that will take you to a page with more information about Windows End of Life and give you an opportunity to request a free technology assessment. You can call us at 855-310-6325. And one of our team members would be happy to work with you to schedule your assessment. And if you fill out your survey today at the end of this webinar, and one of the questions on the survey is, would you like us to reach out to you to schedule a technology assessment? We are happy to do that as well. So with that, I want to thank all of our presenters for coming today and giving us this information. I want to thank all of you for joining us as we talk about this very important topic as it relates to dental practices. As I mentioned, I believe, if I haven't mentioned it, I'll mention it now, a link to this webinar will be provided to all registrants and attendees so you can review the information that was given to you. This is being recorded right now. You can always contact our team, and we are happy to help you. Again, one final plea. If you haven't already filled out the survey on your screen, please do so. This information helps us provide the type of content and webinars that we hope you will find valuable. For those of you who have already requested a free technology assessment, we will be following up with you again in the next few days. I want to thank you all for attending, and I will make sure that if any questions come through that have not been answered, I'll get them to our presenters who will answer those questions for you. And with that, I want to wish you all a wonderful day and week, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks again.